Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's live session where we're going to be talking, give you the opportunity to ask questions of myself from Dorset Police, some of my colleagues from the force, but also colleagues from the local authorities of BCP and also Dorset Council, where we're going to talk this evening around seasonal demand and our response, and give you a bit of a brief overview of what we're doing and how we're responding to demand over the summer period in particular, but give you opportunities to ask us questions. So feel free to start putting those questions in the comments bar now, so we can pick those up in a second. But firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Callahan, Chief Superintendent for Dorset Police, and I'm the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Commander. So I've got responsibility for blue light response, neighbourhood policing and neighbourhood enforcement, so our proactive capabilities, and also our traditional CID, traditional serious and complex investigations. And in addition to that, I've also got responsibility for the overview of seasonal demand across the whole force. But very much it's a partnership approach to how we're policing. And that partnership approach to our demand is really, really important. And tonight you'll hear just some comments of some of the activities that are going on in our joint partnership. But the big point is our demand over the summer period. We know, Dorset's a lovely county. We want people to come and enjoy the county, and we want people to respect the county and behave whilst they're here too. And just give you a little snapshot over the summer, we're going to be giving you some social media posts that talk about actually what sort of demand Dorset Police has had over 7 days periods. And if you just look the past 7 days, we've had over 3,000 incidents recorded in Dorset. And we're not even into the height of the summer at this time. We've over 1,000 crimes recorded. And 999 calls, so those most important 999 calls about that immediate risk to life and harm, over 2,600 in the last 7 days. And then when you look at our 101, so our non-emergency calls and emails, we got 4,717 calls for service in that period of time in the last 7 days. So significant demand, but we see that start to increase over the summer, and you'll hear more from colleagues in a moment in terms of some of the things that we're doing there. But it is very much a multi-agency response to our maintaining a really safe county, and that response, looks to make sure that people can enjoy, but actually use the facilities that we have to offer as a county, so they really enjoy their time, whether they live here or whether it's for tourism purposes, and we get day visits or people coming here on their holidays. So I'm going to just bring in now a number of people, just let them introduce themselves. And we're going to start with a Chief Inspector, Andy Edwards, who works in county. But I'll bring Andy in so he can introduce himself and give a quick overview.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Edwards. I'm a Chief Inspector in Dorset Police, and I'm responsible for the delivery of neighbourhood policing across Dorset County. Dorset County, obviously a really significant geographical area. We're talking from Weymouth and Portland, West Dorset, Purbeck, North and East Dorset, and I'm also responsible for the rural crime team within Dorset Police that oversees the delivery of the rural crime aspects of policing, including wildlife crime and heritage crime, and also the neighbourhood enforcement team, which focuses on drug activity, some of the county lines activity, the exploitation and vulnerability of persons within our communities that we want to safeguard. So that's my responsibility. As you've already heard, summer on the horizon, really busy time for Dorset Police and policing generally. We see significant footfall. It presents a number of different challenges for us as an organisation in terms of how we respond to incidents. So we work with the council very closely, and we and other partners and stakeholders to actually understand where we can expect to have significantly increased demand on particular days, and that might be in relation to, for example, events that are occurring or historical things that have happened previously that we can respond to and reasonably predict ahead of time. So we have, as a result of that, some enhanced policing over the summer period, as you'd expect. It's just really about targeting our resources where they're most impactful and will have the most impact on reducing crime and disorder in local communities. Along with that is early intervention, what we can do as a police service to disrupt and deter crime and antisocial behaviour before it gets to the point where we're called by the public and we end up getting into an enforcement scenario. So really, this is about telling the public about what we've done with the council to prepare for the summer.
Great, thanks, Andy, and we'll take questions after we've done the introductions from people. So I'm now going to bring in Graham Duggan from the local authority for Dorset.
Thanks, Mark. Hello all. My name is Graham Duggan. I'm the Head of Community and Public Protection at Dorset Council. In relation to summer demand, that includes environmental health, trading standards, licensing and community safety, but I also have the overall summer demand lead. And I think key to our working and our planning has been mentioned already is working very closely with our colleagues, particularly in Dorset Police and the other emergency blue light services, and also with BCP Council as well. Looking practically at some of the things that we're doing from the planning that's been done, we'll have a control centre, an additional control centre standing up, a multi-agency centre standing up at peak times to make sure that we get on top of issues as they start to arise quickly and we can contact the right council departments and the right agencies. We're putting on additional services for the summer period. Top of the list, I guess, is around street cleansing and additional litter bin and waste emptying. But also we have strengthened antisocial behaviour patrols, particularly in our town centres, and also safe spaces for people and visitors who may be vulnerable through a bit too much partying, allowing them to recover, and also taking some of the pressure off our A&E departments. Highways and parking, very important, and additional resources there, looking to make sure that our routes in and out of the county remain as clear and as free-flowing as possible, and that parking, there is sufficient parking availability and parking takes place responsibly. I guess I'd also mention that we are responsible for the safety of events that take place, and in both council areas there are a tremendous number and diversity of events over the summer period, and it's important that the public are kept safe and sound attending those events. And lastly, we do have some new public space protection orders coming into effect over the summer. And in particular, these deal with a couple of issues that have cropped up over the past 2 years around wildfires in some of our forest areas. And we'll all remember the fire that took place in Wareham Forest a couple of years ago. So there are new provisions coming in banning barbecues in some of those areas. But also I've seen one question in the chat bar already about camping on beaches, and a new order is coming into effect prohibiting overnight camping on beaches if permission hasn't been granted. So I'll leave it there and pass back to Mark. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Graham. And just before I bring in Kelly Ansell, who's going to talk about what BCP, local authority, is doing, for those that maybe just joined a few minutes late, we're just doing a quick introduction of who's online, very quick overview, and then we're going to get into answering as many questions as we possibly can through this live stream. So I'll bring in Kelly now to talk about what BCP are doing.
Thanks, Mark, and good evening, everybody. My name is Kelly Ansell. I'm Director of Communities at BCP Council. I'm responsible for community safety, community engagement, and also regulatory services, and one of the lead officers for seasonal response within BCP. So this year we've invested £1.7 million in additional enhanced services to support a positive and safe experience for people, for both our residents and our visitors who want to come along to our brilliant places in BCP. And some of the examples of what that money is doing is providing enhanced litter collections, parking and traffic management, park and ride at Kings Park. We have additional resources in our CSAS teams, security and antisocial behaviour. We also have a similar approach to Dorset in terms of those safe spaces. We have a safe bus, which is based in Horseshoe Common throughout the summer, for people who need access to some support and a safe place to be. And the approach that we take is very much based around making sure that we have very clear planning. We're intelligence based. We understand what's happening, and that we're sharing multi-agency data to support that, and then that multi-agency approach filters all the way through to our response. So similarly to Dorset, we also have a multi-agency command centre that's down at the Seafront, and you'll have agencies like the police and the council, various different departments, but also agencies like the RNLI and fire if need be. So really a great place for the agencies to come together, supported by CCTV, to be able to obviously monitor what's happening on the ground. As I said, our priority is really to make sure that everybody is able to safely enjoy the brilliant place that we live and people want to come and visit. It's really a great example, I think. But the positive experience of the last couple of years has been that multi-agency close partnership working, which has really paid dividends. Mark.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Really good update in terms of where we are. I talked a short while ago about some of the calls that we get into Dorset Police. So I'm just going to invite Ben Muspratt in now from our command centre, just give an overview of where we are, and then we're going to get into answering some questions. Ben.
Thank you, Mark, and good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Muspratt. I'm the Temporary Operations Manager for Dorset Police within our Contact Management Department. So what that means is my team deal with the front counter provision at stations across the county. We answer 101 calls and emails via our website, and also deal with 909 calls into the county. So a lot of demand comes our way, and as Mark has explained, we see an uptick in that during the summer periods, and that's due to the county that we all live and visit. We see obviously huge amounts of tourism into the county, so it's an issue that every year we have to make sure that our resources are effectively utilised to give that the best service we can. So what our team are responsible for is obviously taking that initial contact. They're really highly trained, a great team of people that process that information against some clear direction and risk-based decisions to determine the appropriate course of action for that specific incident. So that can range from our highest grading, which would determine blue light and siren response by police and potentially other agencies, through to some other resolutions that may involve desk-based investigations, for example. Throughout the whole seasonal period, our team are linked in and have a close working relationship with other agencies, and link in with the multi-agency controls that Kelly and Graham spoke about just a short time ago, so that there's that real joined up approach to deal with incidents as they're arising within the county. The increase in the volume of calls and contact into the county can lead to some delays on the services that we provide. We do our best with, as I said, a great team that we've got to deal as quickly as we can with the incidents that are being reported. My plea would be that if you've got a non-emergency and you're able to report crime and antisocial behaviour via our website, of which will appear along the ticker at the bottom of the broadcast during the broadcast. That doesn't mean you'll get a decreased service. The same team that you would speak to on the phone would be dealing with any contact that we receive via that means. But what it does do is it enables us to manage our resources to deal with the highest priority incidents at the time that they're being reported. Thank you, Mark.
Cheers, Ben. Thank you. So, ladies and gents, that's just a very, very quick snapshot of all the work that's going on. And, you know, we start thinking about summer demand pre-Christmas. So, you know, summer demand and the seasonal and the great weather does bring increased demand. It does bring increased pressures. But we live in a really, really, you know, safe place. Dorset is a, you know, great county, safe place, but all the local authority, blue light response, and other partners offering providing public service work really hard year long to deliver the best possible service we can. But we accept there are of course pressure on resources at different times, so we do have to prioritise our response to incidents, those that require, you know, threat, risk, and harm, serious harm of life and death, taking priority. So we've got the team here now this evening. We're not going to keep talking ourselves. We'd rather get into answering some questions from people. And just for those that maybe have just joined us, who've a little bit late being able to join, we're going to, throughout the live stream, you know, through Dorset Police, BCP Council, and Dorset Council, we're going to try and answer your questions around seasonal demand. If we can't quite answer all of them tonight, we'll do our best. We'll try and you know, after the event, try and do as many updates as possible. So if we can go into the first question, please. Great. And the first question is from Thomas Anderson. So questions for both police and BCP. What plans do you have in place for people parking along the seafront, blocking driveways and on roundabouts, and parking in an unsafe way across the seafront? Kelly, I just wonder whether it might be a good one for you to come in first from a local authority perspective.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark. So we have additional civil enforcement officers in place throughout the summer season, obviously out patrolling and proactively identifying any parking issues and dealing with them. But also we have tow trucks available that we will use those to clear where people are parked illegally. And I suppose the other thing to say is it's really important with all of this work that we do around the seasonal response that we are focusing on prevention, and that really puts an emphasis on our communications campaigns, and we do very proactive and live real-time comms to support the work that's happening, so that we're sort of promoting messaging about specific issues as they happen at the time. So there is additional resource, and issues can be reported through the council's website if there's something specific.
And I think from a policing response, I think Kelly agreed, the primary response to parking issues is a local authority as an agency. But of course, where there's obstruction of places that are emergency situations, then the police will become involved. But you know, I'm really pleased to say that the work with the local authority, it's rare that we have to be in those situations. But of course, we work together where there's where a policing power is required. If we can take the next question, please. Lorraine Whitmarsh says, as a resident of West Bexington, I would like to know how the camping is going to be dealt with, as we had a campsite there at the weekend. Police finally turned up on Sunday, but campers were still there Monday morning. I'm just thinking that's probably one, forgive my knowledge here if I'm wrong, but I think that's a county area. So if we could bring in maybe Graham and Andy for that one, unless my knowledge is going to say I'm wrong now, chaps.
Yes. Hello, Mark. Yes, it is Dorset Council area, lovely West Bexington. I think over the past couple of years, with COVID and people being restricted on going abroad, there has been an increased problem with camping on beaches. And with some people who camp overnight, then associated noise and ASB and litter and issues like that occurring. As a result of the past couple of years, we have just introduced a new public spaces protection order, which went live on the 1st of July, and we're busily getting the signage up in place now for the main summer period. And the new order covers the West Bexington area and others, and prohibits overnight camping on the beach unless pre-authorised. Now, the local authority obviously whilst we're putting these new regulations in, we are limited on our resources, but we will do our absolute best over the summer period to get our enforcement officers out if these instances are reported, and we have the opportunity to ask people to leave, and if they refuse to, then we can issue a fixed penalty notice. So at our hotspots on beaches over the summer period, we will be taking that approach. So please use the council website, report the incidents in, we'll be watching for them, and we'll take action where we can. Andy,
Great.
I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
If I could just come in on that, I think that's exactly right. And obviously, as a partnership, we support Dorset Council in that public space protection order enforcement. We can take details in the same way. I don't know that incident that's been referred to specifically, and I can only apologise for the time it took for us to get there. But our calls are prioritised based on a threat, risk, and harm model. So we do need to put our resources where they're most required, based on that. But certainly keep calling. We need to know about these things. We need to know about unsocial behaviour on beaches or anywhere, because we don't know about it. We can't then direct our resources and prioritise what we are tackling as a neighbourhood policing team and as a partnership. So we certainly encourage reporting, and you should expect a robust response.
Great, thanks, Graham, Andy. Thank you. If we take the next question then. So next question is from Rose Prowse, and it says, Mark or Ben, it appears from your figures in your opening comments regarding calls to 101 and 999 that the lines are very busy. What resilience is there for the seasonal uplift? Ben, do you want to come in and answer that from a control room perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rose. So this is something that, as Mark said, we plan in our seasonal response, significantly in advance. And what we've been doing this year is to make sure that our resources have the right skills. So where possible, we make sure that our team are trained. As clearly the roles that they perform, we need some a high level of training to make sure that the threat, harm, and risk is being assessed and dealt with appropriately to ensure that the victims are getting the best possible service. So this is something that we make sure that the staff are trained in those periods of lower demand, and that during these times of peak demand, we suspend training as much as we can to make sure that everybody is contributing towards the increase in demand.
Thanks, Ben. I think just to add to that, I think what's really important is that, and one of the reasons for this session is public education. Actually, we still get a lot of calls that don't need to come into our control room, or they're not for the right agency. They're not for police. They might be for ambulance service, or they might be for the local authority. So I think what's really important is before you think about the type of call, because one way is that we make sure the service request goes into the right agency. Often we find people ringing police when actually maybe the local authority the agency should be dealing with, or another emergency service. From a frontline policing to manage some of that demand, we've got our neighbourhood policing teams, and our proactive teams are really focused on proactively policing. We use a term called hotspot policing, and there's an evidence base behind it where we know that if we can get officers in the right places at the right times, we can prevent crime before it happens, and ultimately that reduces demand into the force command centre, and that's often using things like dispersal notices around youth antisocial behaviour that may escalate into violence or more calls from the public. So we use a suite of options. It's the bums on seats in the control room, if I can use that term, to answer the calls, but we're also trying to prevent crime before it happens and prevent people having to even become victims of crime or contact the police as well, from that perspective. Hopefully that helps in some of the explanation, Rose. Next question, please, Christian. Next one's from Phil Turner to Dorset Police. What is happening with regards to rural crime, specifically poaching in Dorset? Andy, I think that's probably a good one to bring you in on.
Yeah, that's aimed fair and squarely at me. So, Phil, yeah, thanks for the question. So, rural crime has undergone a really significant investment within Dorset Police in the last 12 months. So, we've had, if I give you a brief summary of it, first of all, we've had a significant uplift. We've now got a dedicated inspector, dedicated sergeants. We've got leadership on the team, 5 constables, 2 police community support officers, a neighbourhood engagement officer, and they're supported by volunteers as well and special constabulary colleagues. So it's a wide-ranging team, and we're also developing a network of wildlife crime officers across the force with specialist knowledge of some of the wildlife crime areas. Poaching is a problem in Dorset, as it is in every rural community across the country. Not just in terms of the activity itself, but I'm acutely aware of the damage that is caused to land, fences, and the cost to the rural community in terms of their livelihoods, and it has a really significant impact. What we've done recently is we've launched our rural crime team with a really clear direction, and that is around sort of 3 main areas. That's engaging our communities. So we've got an engagement plan for the whole of summer with our new engagement van we've launched last week, which will be in rural communities where you can speak to your local officers so we can get an idea of what's happening, where it's happening, and again, we can direct our resources. We also look in terms of poaching at cross-border criminality and how that works with our regional partners and our regional police forces, because the criminality doesn't always come from Dorset, it comes from Avon and Somerset, Wiltshire, all the neighbouring surrounding forces. So it's about having that joined up approach to problem solving, so we can give some sustainable solutions. So we've had some really good results recently. We've had some convictions in court, you may have seen the local media. So we are out there working with our partners, running poaching operations very regularly throughout the year, and we do advertise those on our Facebook page. So if you want to follow the Rural Crime Team on Facebook page, you can get details from that. But we are doing that. And another thing to mention in terms of rural crime is our partnership work and our commitment to that. Some of our identification of hotspots has already been mentioned. What can we do around early intervention, target hardening? How can we work with our partners to tackle those that cause the highest harm in rural communities, whether that's through prosecutions or through civil orders? So we've got a wide range of measures to deal with it, but we're acutely aware of the issue and the impact on the local community, and we're determined to continue to tackle that.
Great, thanks, Andy. I think you've covered off everything. I don't think I can add anything. A huge amount of work, and particularly in the county area. If we go to the next question, that'd be great. So Dan and UFC Short, what are you doing about the travellers that enter the pool area and the BCP Council area? So that's one for Kelly and I from that perspective. Kelly, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I can do, Mark. Thank you. I mean, ultimately, we work again together, as Mark's already indicated, and he'll cover off the police side of things. Essentially, our approach is about early intervention, early understanding of what's happening, notification coming through to us as quickly as possible for us to be able to respond, and then to work with the groups who are visiting and really understanding the need, their needs, the reason for their visit, and then creating a response which is really ultimately about moving on as quickly as possible. We do that very much hand in hand with the police. If it's a publicly owned site, the council will obviously lead that action, and if it's a privately owned site, then it does come down to the private landowner, but supported by the council and the police in moving on that encampment when they arise. Mark, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I can quickly add. So we do work really, hand in hand with our local authority colleagues, whether it be BCP or county. And we, Kelly's already mentioned the need to make sure that we do a needs assessment of those groups, because some of those groups have, medical needs, they might have vehicle issues, etc. So it isn't just a matter of moving people on without understanding the full circumstances, and the local authority do that initial needs assessment, and then we will, as policing, we have got legislation under the Criminal Justice Public Order Act where we will use that legislation in order where it's required. There are criteria that has to be met, and there's some changes in legislation that's just coming in actually now in June, which the government have brought in, which increase our powers slightly in terms of the amount of time we can say to travellers they can't, from an unauthorised encampment, they can't come back to a specific area. But we have to act within the law, and that means we can't discriminate. and we have to act in a proportionate manner. But actually, that proportionate manner is not just about those that are doing unlawful encampment, but it's also about our communities. And this year already, working really well with the local authority and working with our partners, we have used the Section 61 powers from policing more frequently than we have in previous years. And that's our commitment to making sure that all our communities can respect where they live. And we will not tolerate significant antisocial behaviour and some of the potential criminal actions and the impact on our communities. But definitely with Kelly and the wider team, we work really closely. My neighbourhood chief inspector, the equivalent to Andy Edwards, is on tonight, works really closely with Kelly's teams to make sure that we are acting lawfully but also proportionately, and we don't discriminate in our actions as well, which is important. So anything else, Kelly, that you want to add before I go to the next question?
No, I think that's really helpful, actually, and as you say, it's really important that we're there's that acknowledgement of the need to make sure that we're acting lawfully and that we're acting proportionately, taking reasonable steps, and that this is an issue that it affects many communities, and the traveller community are part of that community as well.
Yeah, definitely. Often quite difficult, challenging circumstances that we work within, but we do work our way through it. Absolutely. Thanks. If we go to the next question. So Neil Barber, what is the most common incidents you get called about? So Neil, I'm going to assume I'm not sure if that's police, etc. So we'll go police first. I'm assuming it is. Ben, can you answer that one for us?
Yeah, this is a great one. I think this is why it's such a great role, because there is such a variety of the needs of the people of Dorset. So it's really a broad spectrum. You never know what each day is going to be like. We know that we see an increase in particularly at the weekends, Friday, Saturday nights, in sort of antisocial behaviour and that nighttime economy piece. However, Tuesdays in February have been some of the busiest shifts I've worked before. So it's really real variety. We had a broad range of types of incidents. Clearly, crime in progress, and crime that has happened, that we need to make sure that we're dealing with that victim and giving the right course of action. But also, we do a lot of work with other agencies where we'll support our colleagues in South West Ambulance Service, for example, Dorset Wiltshire Fire, and obviously Graham and Kelly and the team within the council. So it's really difficult to say what types of incidents we get the most of, because it's a real variety amongst the piece. And just on this topic, that's what makes our roles such a great role. And at the moment we are recruiting. We actually close today, so clearly you'll be engaged until the end of this session, and then I'd encourage you to head onto our website and submit an application, or read up more about what you can do within our roles within the Force Command Centre and the Bournemouth Contact Centre. But we will be opening again recruitment shortly, so if it is something that you're interested in, please keep your eyes peeled for that within the next month or so.
Great, thanks, Ben. A great plug for Dorset Police and the local authorities. Are great employers, and it is a really it's difficult to say what's our most frequent call. I think Ben's trying to articulate that everything from domestic abuse to theft to to more serious crimes, sexual offences, etc., violence. There's a whole range of different types of calls that we get in, and no day is the same, to be honest with you. But we do see lots of crime being reported around violence and domestic abuse, etc., which are that volume, as well as other crimes as well that we get that you'd expect to be reported. But crime is on a constant downward trend for Dorset. So we're doing something right. Graham, I just want to bring you in there just on that question, because you might be able to shed a bit of light on what the local authority calls are.
Yeah, again, like as Ben said, we get a tremendous variety of calls, really interesting incidents reported that hopefully we can help people out with. I guess top of the list at the moment, we're really noticing an increase in noise complaints from licensed premises. And part of this, I think, is down to the couple of years of lockdown when people have not been able to go out and enjoy themselves. And residents perhaps have got a bit used to the quieter environment, and now the amplified music is coming back, particularly in our town centres, and we're getting quite a few calls about this. So we're working with licensees and pub owners to make sure that they take all the practical steps they need to take to keep noise levels down, watch the volume, keep noise doors and windows closed when live bands are on. But of course, as we get into the summer season, ventilation becomes an issue and doors get left open. So we ask residents to sort of give a little bit of tolerance to a little bit of noise that might come from our licensed premises. But if it becomes excessive, if it's keeping you awake or children awake at night, then you need to contact us, and we'll ask our environmental health officers to go out and see if we can achieve an improvement. And at the end of the day, we do have statutory powers, legal powers that we can use, but we'd much rather prefer to negotiate solutions with the pubs and clubs and local residents. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thanks, Graham. I'll get the next question up, but just for those that may have joined a little bit later, we're still in the live stream session looking at, you've got members of Dorset Police, BCP Council and Dorset Council here asking questions around seasonal demand and anything. So if you've just joined, feel free to put some questions in the comments bar. We'll try and get to as many as we possibly can. If we don't get to them, we'll try and reply back though after the event. So Stu Smith, I see you use CSAS officers. So CSAS is about community safety accredited officers. It's where employed by the local authority or others, porters and hospital for argument's sake, and the Chief Constable of Dorset Police delegates powers to them, which we can talk about in a second. They do an amazing job in the town centre. Would you authorise them to use dispersal powers? So Kelly, it's probably one for you and I to start with on this one, I think.
I think thanks for clarifying what CSAS means, Mark, actually, because I mentioned that earlier and I saw there was a question. So yeah, we have CSAS officers currently operating in Boscombe Town Centre, in Poole Town Centre and in Bournemouth Town Centre, and thanks for being so complimentary. They are incredibly hardworking and do a fantastic job, often under quite difficult circumstances. CSAS is ultimately the powers that they they have delegated to them are assigned by the Chief Constable, actually, Mark. So I guess the question about whether or not we would be able to use dispersal powers is one for the police, but certainly they don't have those powers at the moment. But we do work hand in hand with the police. They are essentially the CSAS team are essentially part of that policing family, and we're very much working together. So if there are issues that require the use of dispersal, then we would refer to the police, and that communication and team working is actually seamless. So in a sense, that connectivity is already there.
Great. So I agree. CSAS is a really good, and actually they co-locate and work with neighbourhood teams as well. So they work hand in hand. It's a really good model. And I'm going to bring Andy Edwards in a minute because he can comment on the county of CSAS. So I think it's a really good question. I haven't got the answer for you in terms of whether we can or we can't. I'm not sure legislatively we can. There is legislation in place, and we have to follow that legislation. Of course, CSAS are non-confrontational as well, but I'll take the question away, have a look at the legislation, and then maybe something that we can talk from police to local authority if we think it's beneficial. Of course, CSAS are contracted by and paid and owned by the local authorities. But really good question. I'll go away. We'll look at the legislation and see what the potential opportunities were. But I agree, really good staff who do a really good job, and we work really well together as a partnership. Andy.
Yeah, thank you. I just thought I'd add some context from the county in terms of accredited officers that work within the council. Just really to say that they work really closely with Dorset Police, particularly with our neighbourhood teams. Over the summer, we've got some dedicated briefings, so we've all got the same information. We're all on the same page in effect, and we know what we're looking for. We're able to target our resources again collectively to have the most impact on community issues, whether that's in the town centre or otherwise. I think it's just about CSAS officers, like Mr. Callahan has said, it's non-confrontational. It is about the eyes and ears of the police. It is about expanding on our capability and our capacity to be able to tackle some of these complex issues. And if we can, use our wider police family to achieve that, then that's brilliant, and we will do that. So CSAS are a key partner for us, along sitting inside the council department, and we certainly work very closely with them in the county as well as within BCP.
Great, thanks, Andy. And I think hopefully you're getting the message from is that we want to be really robust around, particularly around antisocial behaviour, those things that are preventing people having enjoying our towns and our coastal areas, etc. And within our communities. The CSAS is one option, linked with neighbourhood staff, PCSOs, also neighbourhood policing staff, and all those other powers that we have from within policing and wider. We won't tolerate such levels of antisocial behaviour, and that's why significant investment by the local authority and the support of policing into that community safety accreditation scheme, and therefore the staff that are accredited. So hopefully that helps with some of those answers, but I'll certainly take away the dispersal powers one and have a look at that. Thanks for the question. Next one, please. Destiny Jade, do you have any action plans or awareness with regards to county lines or grooming in our area as it's rife? So it's probably one for me and Andy Edwards. That one, I think. Andy, do you want to go first? Or,
yeah, of course. Of course, yeah. So for the from a county perspective, yes, we do have plans. We have delivery plans. We have aims and objectives, and we have strategic objectives to tackle county lines, exploitation, and vulnerability in communities. And that might be through safeguarding, education, enforcement at the other end of the scale. But it's also about really significant partnership work and in-depth partnership work with statutory and non-statutory partners alike, and the third sector, to identify where that risk is. We conduct a number of visits through my neighbourhood enforcement team to premises that may have been taken over by drug dealers, and we tackle that head on. So Dorset is not a place where you can come to deal drugs easily. It is a robust place. We have got significant plans in place. We've got operations running throughout the year where we tackle drugs head on, county lines nominals, linking in with regional forces, national and regional operations as well. So really significant in terms of managing that risk in local communities. And we understand the scale of it. Absolutely, we do. And it is a complex issue to tackle, which takes huge amounts of resources, but we're committed to dealing with it. And any information should be reported to us so that we can then act upon it and keep people safe and make Dorset as safe as we can for everybody.
Great, thanks, Andy. So I'll try not to repeat anything that's Andy's said. First off, there's no place for county lines and the criminality, the fact that they target vulnerable people and they look to exploit children. Really clear. And we've talked. You'll probably see in some of our social media and press, Operation Viper. And you'll start to see, or if you should be seeing, if you don't follow some of the social media accounts, particularly the Facebook ones and Twitters of your neighbourhood teams, because we are proactively making the environment toxic for county lines, and that's work at a very high end around serious and organised crime, and really targeting those organised criminality in those county lines that often come out of areas, metropolitan areas like London, etc. And also then the more local grown aspects of maybe homegrown as in Dorset lines and criminality around drug supply. So we tackle at a very high level into the region, as Andy's already talked about. We've got real clear plans, intelligence-led focus on criminality, county lines, drug dealing, knife carrying, and that link to child exploitation. We don't just work with Kelly's team around antisocial behaviour. We also work with the Director of Children's Social Care and look at how we can intervene in schools. So that whole panacea of prevention, early intervention with young children, stopping them getting involved in drugs and that supply, all the way through to kicking doors in and making Dorset a really toxic environment, because we don't want county lines, we don't want that criminality in Dorset. The government uplift has provided extra resources, and the chief officer team in Dorset have given extra resources into neighbourhood policing, and we're starting to, or already at least a couple of teams, 2 or 3 teams in fact, looking at neighbourhood enforcement, and that is getting back to really proactive policing around things. And the final thing, just a re-comment, you can contact us for intelligence, and we need your intelligence from the community. You know, but if you don't want to contact the police through the online service, you can contact Crime Stoppers. That intelligence still comes through to us. You can keep it anonymous, but we need the public to report and tell us all the problems, so we know the issues and we can start addressing them. And then we work within the community safety partnerships with our local authority colleagues to make sure we're tackling it from all possible angles as well. So hopefully that helps, but we're really passionate about stopping county lines and exploitation of our communities. Next one, please. Wayne Collins, what is being done to help the homeless that want to change their lives? What options do they have? So if I can maybe bring in Kelly and also Graham on this one. And if you want to talk about, I don't know whether Kelly, you want to go first, then Graham, and I can add in a policing context.
Yeah, sure. Happy to, Mark. Thank you. So there's a again, I think feel like we've a bit of a broken record when we talk about partnership approach, but it genuinely is so important, and particularly around these sorts of issues. So there are a number of different accommodation pathways. We have an assertive outreach model that we apply in BCP with St Mungo's, who work with us to really get out there and to work with the homeless community to understand their needs and ultimately to work with them to bring them indoors. So lots and lots of proactive work that happens on a daily basis, and outreach that is very, as I say, very proactive. We also, you know, as well as that support that's available and those accommodation pathways, we obviously work to prevent homelessness, looking at how we work with our drug and alcohol partners, mental health partners too. There's a huge role for the voluntary and community sector as well in this, and we have a very active, very fortunate to have a very active voluntary and community sector focused on supporting supporting homelessness and street-based homelessness in particular in BCP. So a number of different options that are available, and of course then where there are issues relating to street-based antisocial behaviour such as begging and those other sorts of issues that you do see in our town centres, we work again very closely with the police and other partners to make sure that we're combating that. There's a real key role for CSAS in that, and we've also got through the seasonal response some additional security detail that is patrolling proactively in the town centres to make sure that they're able to deal with passive begging, and adding to the you know, the patrol function, the eyes and ears and boots on the ground to be able to share information and tackle the issues as we see them.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Graham, anything you want to add?
Only very little. Kelly's really sort of summed it up, and the good work taking place in BCPs is mirrored in Dorset Council's area. I guess the one thing I would add is that I think if you can see any positives out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's difficult at times, one positive was that the government required local authorities to get homeless people off the streets because of the pandemic. And in a way that enabled some really tight engagement with homeless people, and really getting to understand what their circumstances were and why they were homeless, and allowing some very targeted support to take place. So we perhaps reached more people during the COVID-19 pandemic, and were able to get people onto a more permanent path to avoid homelessness, which was a positive thing. But I'd echo what Kelly has said, really, and certainly support our CSAS officers in Weymouth, who work very closely with our housing colleagues, and of course Dorset Police.
Great, thanks, Graham. That's great, thanks. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think you've covered it off. We work in partnership to address those issues, so we'll try and get another question in. I think Lawrence Herdman, media question, BBC Radio Solent. Welcome, Lawrence. We frequently receive press releases on missing persons. How much of a drain on Dorset Police resources are missing person inquiries and also mental health related incidents? So I'll take this one. Lawrence, we get around 5,000 reports of missing persons each year in Dorset, and they range from we categorise them to high, medium, and low risk. If you put it into context, if you look at the Jubilee weekend, those 4 days, we had around 41 missing persons investigations over that 4-day period. A number of those with high risk, and a number were found very, very quickly. And I wouldn't say missing persons is a core role of policing. I think that's the first thing. And actually, many of the missing that go are often children, and children with some complex needs. So we can obviously, from that perspective, we have really robust processes in place in order to make sure that we deliver a service around missing persons. We also, though, work with children's social care and elderly care homes, etc., about how we can prevent people going missing in the first place. In terms of mental health, it does, mental health, we have a significant amount of calls to service for mental health, and we work really closely with South West Ambulance Service and the NHS and the mental health teams to try and make sure that the right service deals with mental health. But I'd be lying if I said we didn't have significant calls for service around mental health. It's a team effort amongst all our partners, making sure that the person in crisis gets the right response from the right people, and our primary responsibility from policing is to save life. But we do have a significant mental health demand. Some of that probably shouldn't come into policing, but we also know that even prior to COVID and now our NHS and South West Ambulance services are really stretched, and therefore we need to be in a position where we can support each other, but we're actively working about how we can improve services going forwards and make sure the right service goes to them. I think the key thing is, if a person's in need, we're not going to leave anybody in need. If someone's in crisis, needs support because there's a risk to their life, we will make sure that we respond, and we'll pick up the learning, etc., with partners, and try and constantly improve our services. I don't know whether actually that probably covers off that point really, I think. But again, from a police perspective, a lot of demand that comes in, and we're constantly trying to reduce harm. Often we talk about reducing demand, but it's actually about identification of harm, and helping people to prevent them being further harmed, which in turn reduces our demand. Should we move on to the next question, Christian? Rob Hart, does the multi-agency centre have feeds? I think that's what it's lovely feeds from the beach to improve situational awareness. It threw me that's one there with the love there. But Kelly, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think Rob did correct it later on in the
Oh,
feed.
did he? Thank you, Rob. Sorry.
Live feeds. Yes, the answer is yes. We do have so the CCTV live feeds down at the multi-agency command centre on the Seafront, and that will cover off sight of the beaches, but also and actually not just the beaches themselves, but of course the water. It's really helpful in terms of water safety. And then from the point of view of crime and antisocial behaviour, general issues of disorder, that also then covers the road networks and the town centres. So from that multi-agency command centre, we're able to, it's a wealth of data and information that goes into the planning for our enhanced response at peak times, and then the operating model that we apply when we are in our kind of peak demand timescales, and hour by hour, minute by minute, that's informed by CCTV. So very much part of the process.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Just to bring in Andy Edges very quickly, just going to talk about the county, Mac, before we take another question.
Thank you, boss. Yeah, it's just to reassure our watchers or listeners around the county's response to it. So the county, Dorset County, do run a MAC as well, a multi-agency command centre, and it is the most useful thing we've had in place for many years from my perspective. It just gives us that shared understanding of risk, and we can, you know, we can be aware of each other's capabilities and capacity in terms of what we can achieve, so we can understand the risks that we're facing as a partnership before we get to deal with them. So we can see what demand's going to be like. We can look ahead, get proper plans in place, and it really means that we have a joined up collaboration between us, so we can actually tackle the issues as a partnership as opposed to single agencies. So it's a really positive step forward. Multi-agency command centre, all the partners involved in it, and really significant in terms of our performance over the summer.
Great, thanks. And I think I'll go one step further for both the county and BCP. I think the MAC is a real success for us about how we respond to demand, and it's one of the best things. But in it, to the fact that recently we've had some other police forces, other areas come in looking at how we respond to our seasonal demand as a partnership, which I think is testament to all the hard work that's gone in. So huge praise for the teams that run the MACs and have delivered that from my perspective. Should we take the next question? Lee Sawyer, why is it when you suffer a crime, maybe a break-in, malicious damage or similar, do you not bother coming out and only just give a crime number? Lee, I'll try and answer that question for you. So as you've already heard today, that when incidents are coming through to the control room, we do an initial assessment of them, and for immediate departments where there's threat, risk, and harm, so immediate violence, a thieves onto a premises, or burglary in progress, or a shoplift attention where there's violence, somebody being assaulted, domestic abuse, where there's that immediate threat, risk, and harm. That's when we will deploy frontline officers out on the ground who are in the police cars going out on blues and going to those cases. And a lot of that is all high threat, risk, and harm incidents going. As a force, we deal with some investigations, and I'll bring Ben Musprat in because he might be able to add some further from the control room. But we do some investigations in the control room, and if there's no lines of inquiry, then they'll be ultimately investigated remotely, and then we'll potentially, if there's no lines of inquiries, whilst there might be nothing we can investigate and take further at that point, that goes into our crime database, so we can see, are we starting to get crime series, repeat victims, potentially locations, have we got something that's starting to grow, so we need to put more resource in place, and it's all part of our intelligence as well. We also have our other response is the desk-based resolution team. They're using technology to its best, and the finite resources that we've got. There are some investigations where we can do them over the phone or remotely, taking statements, etc., and doing investigations. That doesn't mean that we're not going doing inquiries outside, like CCTV inquiries, etc. In fact, the desk-based resolution team, which is part of my command, and I command it for the force, does huge amount over the phone in terms of investigation. But then we have police community support investigators, so PCSOs that have been given further training to investigate. They then go out and do house to house, ring doorbell inquiries, CCTV inquiries, etc., to build and do those inquiries. So whilst you may not see an immediate response for some of those offences where the offender's made off and the impact is, the threat, risk, and harm is lower, it doesn't mean that we're not investigating them and we're not taking things further. We are. Unfortunately, we would love to solve every crime, though, but there isn't a CCTV camera of every CCTV image of every crime. We have limitations in some of the inquiries. But what I can give you reassurance is, if there are positive lines of inquiry, we will follow those positive lines of inquiry. But some of them are done by desk-based investigators rather than patrol officers who are going to those threat, risk, and harm cases. Ben, is there anything you want to bring in?
I think you covered it really well there, Mark. I think just to add that the team are highly trained in trying to pick out those elements of threat, harm, and risk, which determine against our policies and processes that the response that is required for that incident. And there's all sorts of mechanisms built in to pick out vulnerabilities that may trigger a different response, and to link in also with the desk-based team that Mark spoke about. So it's a very fluid process that we go through, because in policing, no incident is the same as the previous one, so we have to adapt and have trust in our processes and our highly trained teams that deal with those. So whilst, as Mark would say, we would love to be able to investigate everything that is reported to a high standard, we have to make clear decisions balanced against the lines of inquiries that are available to determine where our resources are best utilised to for those positive outcomes, and to make sure that the victims are safeguarded.
Great, thanks, Ben. And I think to add to that is we have lots of audits, etc., where we look at making sure that we're delivering a great level of service through to, our officers are really busy, our staff are really busy trying to deliver the best they can for the public, and they do an amazing job day in, day out, and come to work every day trying to do the best they possibly can, and they put up with some quite significant abuse from certain members of the public. I think a lot of the public absolutely support the police in what they do, and I just wanted to sort of really emphasize the work of the local authorities and also police is doing a difficult job in difficult circumstances. So huge thanks from my perspective. Next question, please. So this one's from Chris Grant. Is there going to be some support to the marine aspect of policing? I'll also bring in, so I'll cover this policing, but I don't know whether from a local authority perspective, my colleagues will want to add anything. So I'll bring in Graham and also Kelly, just from a local authority perspective as well. But so from Dorset Police's perspective, we have a dedicated single point of contact neighbourhood policing team. So only a small team, but for that team are about engaging with the community, and particularly the marine community. Just like we have the rural crime team, we have a smaller marine team which doing that engagement, and we have neighbourhood engagement officers really engaged to understand what are the issues in our marine communities. It's a huge coastal line that we've got. On top of that, we've obviously got our neighbourhood teams who are land-based, who are still engaging with all communities. And in addition, we also obviously working with the harbour master around activities who have a lot of primacy on the water, and we also have what's called a force support group, and we have in Dorset, covering the whole of Dorset, we have 3 support groups, which are really like your public order type teams, proactive teams that are and have dedicated skills. So you'll sometimes see them with a big red key, boshing indoors as well, but they support a lot of our events. But one of those teams got marine capability as well, and they're on the water, being visible, tackling criminality on the water, antisocial behaviour, etc. Used for lots of taskings. They're not solely on the water. They do a lot of land-based activity as well. Marine policing is very much one of our areas of focus from our neighbourhood policing team and engaging with them. And if there's a Facebook site to follow, but if you want more contact from the neighbourhood policing team involved in marine, drop us a line and start inquiries, and we can make sure that's joined up for you. Kelly, Graham, I just want to bring you in just to sort of see if there's anything else you want to add. I know it's about marine policing, but anything you want to add in terms of capabilities, etc.
Mark, sorry, Graham, if I'm interrupting you.
Kelly.
I'll carry on. I guess again, just to make the point around the water safety and the work that we do with the RNLI, the work that happens down at the MAC, and the coordination capability that gives us in terms of being able to understand what's happening in real time, working with the police and the other blue light agencies. And I mentioned the RNLI right at the beginning, and I think it's really important that we do. We can't really understate that their role in terms of safety in the sort of water in the water. The other agency that of course we deal with is the Harbour Commissioner, who often have primacy over some of the issues that we might see around water safety. So all very much linked up and very much part of the seasonal response that we have in place.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Graham, anything you want to add?
Yes, and support what Kelly said. Also, our 3 harbours and harbour masters work very closely with the police. That's down at Lyme, West Bay, and at Weymouth. And the harbours become so busy over the summer period with leisure activities, and marine safety is really important. So people need to watch out for incidents or watch out for dangerous situations that they think they see occurring, and let us know, because we do have harbour masters who can act quickly and also liaise with our partners as well. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thanks, Graham. That was the last question for tonight, folks. Well, hopefully, the questions and the response from us has been really helpful to you. We've had huge thanks for over 200 viewers this evening, and this has gone out over 8 channels over social media. And a really fantastic response from the public. This is one event that we can really come together and demonstrate as partnership how we're working and what we're doing. I'm hugely proud, and I know Kelly and Graham and the local authorities are hugely proud of our staff and the work they do to protect our communities. And we'll continue to do that to make sure that people can enjoy Dorset, and enjoy the spaces we offer, but also make sure people behave appropriately, and hopefully they don't have to use those public services that are there to look after them. So a huge thank you. Thanks again for tuning in. Hopefully those questions that are there, what we haven't managed to answer, we can try and answer through the various different channels as we go forwards. But thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely evening. Cheers. Thank you.